Good evening, everybody. Boa noite, Brasil. Buenas noches a toda América Latina. On behalf of Investing Latam, it is a pleasure to welcome you to this new edition of Conversations with Victor Munoz. Tonight, we have a very special guest, Caio David, CEO from ITAU BBA. Of course, ITAU doesn't need much of an introduction as the largest bank in Latin America, has certainly global presence, and is a story in the making now for more than 90 years. What I like to say about Caio is, ever since I met him and heard about his story, is just impressive. Caio entered the bank as a trainee and worked his way up through the years, all the way to becoming the CEO of the investment bank, ITAU BBA. He is an MBA from NYU and a mechanical engineer. Caio, welcome tonight to this conversation.
Victor, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for this opportunity. And of course, thank you for these kind of words. I really appreciate it.
You more than deserve them. Let's talk first a little bit about the obvious situation. This crisis of the COVID-19 is really a global crisis. It's not a local situation. It's really a global crisis. Openly, how do you see the situation?
Well, Victor, I would say that this crisis is different from the others, very different from the others. First of all, because it is a crisis related to public health. And if we compare with the 2008 crisis, which was pretty much fundamentally financial, then you see a huge difference. Of course, as you mentioned, when you talk about a global pandemic, that's another issue because we are thinking about all sectors suffering at the same time globally the effects of a slowdown in the economy. So based on that fact, I would say that we have a lot of challenges ahead. And I remember in January when we were discussing in some meetings in the World Economic Forum in Davos, two main hot topics, I would say. The first was the climate change, sustainability, and so on. And the second one was about economic growth. And then the question was if the world would grow above 3% or not. What happened just 3 months later is that we are going to face a recession of 3% in 2020. So it is just unimaginable. It's like, something that we would not expect even when we run those very stress scenarios in our business. So something unthinkable like that. So it's going to be different from the others. And we, for sure, are going to face a lot of challenges ahead.
Completely agree with that. And it is, in a way, unfortunate, but it also, hopefully, will generate some good things as well out of all this. Let's talk a little bit about the response of the bank to the crisis, now specifically at an institutional level.
Well, it's important to mention three elements that the bank has a strategy, and those elements are key to understand where we are right now. First of all, the bank has a very strong corporate governance and a very strong risk culture. And that means that based on those things, we were able to define very well responsibilities. We can define very well limits and policies. And not only for Brazil. Actually, that framework is based on the understanding of the whole region and how we should operate all units in Latin America. So that first element is really important. And the way we manage the crisis is based on those strong corporate governance and the risk culture. The second element I would highlight is the risk appetite of the bank, which means the board of directors define metrics as a way to better manage the risks involved in our operations. And I would highlight two main metrics here, which were key to manage this crisis as well. Those are liquidity and capital. So based on the parameters that we manage the bank, we were able to attend our clients, even a situation like this, because we have high level of liquidity and high level of capital. And I guess the third point that I would highlight is that for decades, the bank has been able to invest a lot on technology. And technology has been the main driver here to support our business during this crisis. So we are talking about, digital channels, remote meetings, and virtual, interactions. So we really have been able to attend our clients during this period with lockdown and some other measures throughout the region to support better our clients based on those technologies. So I would say that those three elements have been extremely important to help us to go through this crisis in a way that we can provide support to our clients. So overall, those are the pillars, and we have seen a lot of change in the way we operate. We prepare home office for more than 50,000 people, which is something. And I would say that 30,000 people were with new notebooks in about a week at home. So it was quite impressive the way we manage the support to our employees to run the bank like this. And of course, there is another piece, a very important piece that I mentioned, is about client. So here, we have been able to support them in their needs, which are pretty much related to the cash flow imbalances that they are facing, in a way to bring more tranquility to them to go through this very tough moment. So those are the pillars that I would like to mention in terms of what we are doing here, based on the three elements that I mentioned before.
Okay. There's many actions of the bank that have caught my eye, but there's one especially that I need to bring up. The bank made the largest private donation ever, at least in Brazil. And sorry about this. And we're talking about a donation of 1 billion reais. But here, of course, it's the huge size of the donation. But the other is the way that you guys are making sure that it actually gets to where it should be and it has the largest impact. You guys not only make the donation, but also put together a committee that is going to manage that money, a committee led by the general director of the Sírio-Libanês Hospital, one of the most reputable hospitals in Brazil and Latin America. Tell us a little bit about that. How do you guys get to that? How do you guys do it? Because I think it's a very, very interesting example.
I guess we do have our responsibility here in Brazil, not only because of our size, our relevance to the financial sector, but also because we have other ways to contribute to a crisis like this. Not only providing liquidity and managing credit to our clients, but also trying to figure out ways to support the health system somehow. So the idea came from the board of directors as a way to, give some contribution from the private sector in this very difficult moment for the public health in Brazil. Mm-hmm. So we invited a group of distinguished healthy specialists who are the managers of those investments, and we have been able to address key issues in Brazil because of their contribution in terms of allocation, and we are quite happy with this. In 3 weeks, just to give you an idea, we were able to allocate more than 800 million reais already. From field hospitals to equipments and so on. So we are quite happy with this, and I believe that that's part of our contribution to the crisis, which is quite important.
Yeah. In that same line, I completely agree with you. And actually, about 45 days or 30 days ago, I would have thought that we were going to have some kind of V-shaped recovery. But I guess it has dawned on all of us that's not going to be like that, and that we really have a long and winding road ahead of us. How can the financial sector, not just ITAU, but the financial sector as a whole, help lead the way through that difficult road that lies ahead? How can the financial sector help the economy get back in its feet faster? How can the financial sector help consumption? How the financial sector can help people? How do you see the role, the social role, in this moment of crisis?
This is quite important, and when you talk about donation, we are talking about social responsibility and how we can better play our role in the overall country. So here, the first thing which is quite important is the soundness of the financial system. So if you have a very reliable financial system with banks well capitalized, then banks started to play an important role in terms of being part of the solution and not adding an issue to the crisis because of any difficulty in terms of capital and so on. So being part of the solution, then we can help a lot this very important social issue that we are facing. So just to give an idea, we're providing new credit lines to our clients. We are renegotiating. We are rolling out also some debts. So those are measures to help our clients to go through this crisis with a better balance in their cash flows. Those are very important measures, and I would say that the central banks, not only in Brazil, but also in Latin America, have been done a great job in terms of providing liquidity and helping banks to support their clients to new credit lines and so on, which are quite important in this moment. So having a very healthy financial system is key to bring them, all those banks, to a different level of contribution in this moment.
Okay. Very well. Let's move to a next topic, perhaps something a little bit more technical. What is the credit situation overall right now? And this has at least 3 dimensions. One is, what is the situation of corporates, medium-sized and small companies? Second dimension is, how prepared is the financial system in Brazil and in other countries, quite frankly, not just Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Peru, to cope with the situation? And the third dimension is, what are governments doing? What can they do to help at this moment?
That's a good question. Talking first about the credit portfolio here at the bank. That's another part of this strategy. We have a very diversified portfolio, which means less concentration by sector, by single names, and so on. So that helps a lot when you face a situation like this, where the delinquency rate will go up for sure in all those segments that you mentioned, individuals, small and medium-sized companies, and also corporations. So the way we see it is that we have been able to manage the credit portfolio in a way, as I mentioned, postponing installments and so on. And the impact of the social distancing and the lockdown initiatives here in Brazil and in all countries in Latin America as well have brought a slowdown in economic activity, which is, I would say, extremely sensible in terms of the credit portfolio of the banks. So we are trying to manage those impacts, giving time and giving ways of refinancing those credits as a way to support our clients here. What is important to mention is that overall, I would say that the financial sector is very prepared to cope with this situation. So first of all, I would say that we are entering this crisis in a much better shape than before, than a previous crisis. Why is that? Well, first of all, in Brazil, for instance, we have been recovering quite well from the last recession, which took place in 2015 and 16. So here, the banks are quite solid, and the banks were growing and expanding business. They were diversifying revenues. They apply efficiency programs. So those are measures that help a lot a bank like ourselves to go through this crisis in a better way to contribute to the whole system. So those are key elements here to allows us to go deeper in this contribution. It is important to mention here in Brazil that another important variable is related to the interest rates. So we do have right now the lowest level ever in Brazil, which helps a lot when we're talking about debt restructuring and from individuals and also from corporates. So overall, I'm confident that the financial sector will continue to play an important role, not only in Brazil, but also in other countries as a way to go through this crisis as smooth as possible. And go ahead.
No, I was about to say that. Do you see any main differences between or among the South American, Latin American countries where you have a presence, or in one, then you might be more concerned about one thing than other?
We do have some differences among them. I would say that Peru and Chile are in a better situation, especially because if you take into consideration the net debt to GDP, so they are running about 10% or more or less. So it is a different situation from what we are seeing in Brazil and Argentina and Colombia as well. Talking about Argentina, besides managing the crisis, they are in the middle of a restructuring process in their debt. So it complicates a little bit because there is limited access to international resources. And when we talk about Colombia, maybe oil prices are putting some pressures on its situation. But I guess with the prices above $30, which is pretty much what we are seeing right now, that might help to manage this situation. But I would add that Brazil has, a GDP retraction, which impacts our, debt to GDP. We are running about 80% or so right now, And we are trying to bring some relief to that ratio, but with the fiscal stimulus that we are seeing right now, provided by the government, then it will take longer to see a better performance in terms of our fiscal deficits. So I see different situations in countries in Latin America, each one facing different challenges, but overall, the measures and policies of governments have been pretty much the same, which means providing liquidity to the financial sector, helping those less favorable individuals, and trying to bring some recovery of the economy in 2021. And they are hoping that it's going to be in a V shape. But let's see, Victor.
Okay. When we started the crisis 60 days ago, basically, we started to say, okay, maybe GDP is going to be around zero. Then we said, no, it's going to be negative. And we said, no, maybe negative 2%. A couple of weeks ago, we were already saying negative 5%, and so on and so forth. I even heard 2 or 3 days ago somebody saying that it could get in Brazil to double digits negative. And of course, the impact in Colombia, in Chile, is also going to be important, although it seems that those two economies are a little bit more resilient. Resilient is that maybe negative 3, 5%. Do you think really that in Brazil can get to a double-digit negative growth?
Nowadays, I believe the range is somehow between 4.5, which is our figure from our macro team, and 7%. But, it all depends on the extent of the crisis. And so those numbers are being reviewed every week. So let's follow closely. It is difficult to say what's going to be the end of this.
Okay. Let's get out a little bit of the crisis now. Let's talk about other things. One of the trends that was already in place before the crisis has been digitalization. Of course, with the crisis, we all have been forced to become more digital, and there's no argument about that. But the bank, as a long-standing institution, it has different strengths. One of them, I believe, is the local presence, the huge presence that the bank has in the countries, and in Brazil particularly, all over the place, in a country that is continental size. However, digitalization argues for perhaps less agencies, a more digital platform. How is the bank thinking about that? What is the trend where you guys want to go, and how do you see the landscape in terms of competitors, from other large banks that are becoming digital to new 100% or completely digital banks, the kind of banks that do not have agency? How do you see all this?
I guess there is a trend towards digital platforms. So we have been investing a lot in terms of bringing the best user experience through digital. And here we are talking about mobile and internet and so on. And that trend is pretty much done. I mean, the new generation is the one leading this process, because they are the ones asking for a different type of relationship with banks. The way they do banking is quite different. So from there, we are providing not only digital services to them, but also we continue to offer services throughout our traditional branches. But in the last 3-4 years, we have been able to reduce the number of branches because our clients are not demanding that much that kind of channel. So we are managing this migration to digital based on the demand from our clients. So that's the way we see it. During the crisis, what is interesting is that, of course, the number of digital transactions went up by 50%. So, and we have much more clients just operating to digital. And that's going to be a trend. I mean, that's going to be the way we're going to see the world playing, because the experience for those clients is much better. It's much easier. I would say that it's part of the strategy of the bank, providing that kind of service. And we continue to do that.
Okay. Now, I'd like to actually move to another topic, which is the post-crisis. As I think about businesses, etc., of course, we all have to be very focused in how to manage things today, well-being of people, home office operations, etc. But then, I guess we all agree that whatever comes after this is going to be different from what we were living 60, 70 days ago. The question is, how different? Is it going to be radically different? Is it going to be somehow different? Certainly, people are going to be more digital, but are we going to get to the point where physical spaces are not needed? People working from home. Is it true that you're going to see empty offices all over Faria Lima, here in São Paulo, in La Carrera Séptima in Bogota, right? In Golf in Santiago, is that going to become a ghost town? Social distancing. I mean, the era of big concerts is gone. Cinema, movies, theaters is done. How do you see that future? Because as we think of how that's going to be, we will need, as business leaders, to prepare for that. So in your case, how are you foreseeing all these changes? How do you see the post-crisis scenario?
That's a great question, Victor. I'm not so sure if I have an answer to that, but the way I see it is that social interaction will change. And people learn how to interact in different ways right now. And I believe part of it is going to be the new normal in those social relationships. Also, home office is going to be part of the business. I mean, we are having very good feedbacks from our teams in terms of how good they are, enjoying how they are enjoying this kind of relationship with clients and even with the bank from home. And that brings a lot of productivity as well, because just to give you an idea, in our commercial area, we are interacting 3 times more with our clients than before. Of course, our clients are also in a virtual type of relationship with us, and that helps a lot. And the clients are enjoying because they can decide, they can discuss alternatives for their business in a faster way with a lot of efficiency. So I guess that's going to be part of the new norm as well. And talking about corporate business, as you mentioned, I have read some papers about Manhattan. So what's going to happen with those corporate buildings, and how they're going to manage the fact that maybe we are not going to have that kind of flow in the island anymore. So things will change for sure. We don't know how deep, how profound they will be, but that's for sure. But let me take advantage, Victor, here and ask you a question, if you allow me.
Of course, you're welcome.
All right, thank you. How you're seeing as an investor this situation? I mean, this slowdown in the economy in Latin America, and of course, how you see the recovery from now on, based on the fact that we have a lot of investments in the region, and I would appreciate your comment here, I guess.
Okay. It was not supposed to happen, but very quickly, we, first of all, as a reaction of the crisis, you focus on people and their well-being, their health, of course, and then obviously the work from home is being a challenge, because it's not just to give an order, everybody goes home. I think it's also begin to understand what that means for people. You have a wife or a husband who now is at home with the 3 little kids running around in a small apartment. Do they have the right environment to work or not? And how can we help them do their work from home? So that's been, I'd say, number one. And then number two has been focusing a lot on the businesses. And businesses, you have some cash generating engines that you need to get going, particularly here in Brazil. In the case of our investments in renewable energy, we have several wind parks going. We need to make sure that operation and maintenance goes on and they don't stop. And of course, we have parks as well that are being constructed, etc., to try to help to minimize the impact. And then I think, in a way, infrastructure will be one of the tools that governments will use to help restart the economy, build roads to the extent electricity is needed. And here is one of the big differences between countries. In Brazil, we have now real overcapacity in a way. I don't know when the new auctions for electricity will come, etc. We have the case of Colombia, where the level of the water plants is very low. It's around 32%. And if there is an economic retake rather quickly, Colombia might be pressed or restricted for the availability of power. So there might be as well not only the need for roads, there might be the need of electricity, etc. So I think that as an investor in infrastructure is something that's a good news. We will have to be looking at and seeing specifically how we can participate in those and help that happen, help create employment, help create consumption, etc., etc. But overall, I'd like to say those things. Two things. One, I completely agree with you. The recovery is going to be very long. Yesterday, I've heard that, for example, Colombia already announced that there will not be international flights until September 1st. And of course, this is assuming everything goes well. So that only sends you just a message of the kind of things that, of the length of the time we'll have to wait for some sort of new normal, however that's going to go. And the second thing is, yep, I do expect a lot of changes in behavior, in consumption. I don't think offices will disappear, but I believe we're going to be way more flexible. And look, you want to work from home this morning, do it. You want to leave now and work from home. It's going to become more focused on results rather than how many times you spend in an office. But I don't believe that the interaction of people being together in a place as a team can be replaced necessarily by a video. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see where things go. But that's how I see the future and the opportunities. So, but with that, let me get back on the questions.
Thank you.
And this particularly interesting. I wouldn't say difficult, but it's something that we've not stopped to think yet. I think all the governments, and rightly so, are spending a lot of money to help companies, to help people, and will have to spend a lot of money in getting the economy going. That means deficits. That means debt. And at some point, that will have to be repaid. Does that mean necessarily more taxes? Are there any creative ways in which we could start to work to pay that debt without necessarily increasing taxes that might actually be more negative for the recovery of the economy? How do you see that paying the bill after the crisis is gone?
I would say the answer would be a little bit different for each one of those countries. But let's take the example of Brazil. So I guess over time, an increase in taxes will be necessary somehow. And fiscal discipline is going to be key as a way to manage the impact of those things. And we have been discussing a lot about structural reforms in Brazil. And after the COVID, if we do not address those key reforms, then we are not gonna get any opportunity to bring the fiscal deficit down and accommodate or compensate somehow what we are seeing as a public expenditures right now. So there's going to be a combination of those things, and I believe that fiscal discipline you have to be one of the key drivers down the road as a way to avoid higher fiscal deficits in the coming years. But I would say that we have to go through this first, see how much investments will be done to support the families and the companies in each one of those countries, and then try to figure out ways to bring down this deficit to a reasonable level that would allow us to bring sustainable GDP growth again to the whole region.
Caio, thank you very much for this time and for sharing your opinions and your views with us. People are here to listen to you, to your thoughts. To close, I'd like to open space for you to send a message to people in business and to people in general across Latin America about the crisis, about the future. What would you like to say to everybody who's listening to us right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for the open question, because I see some takeaways, and I would love to share with you guys what I have in mind. So it's a great opportunity. So I would say that at the corporate level, what I see as important takeaways is the importance of a sound financial system, the importance of investments in technology, as we discussed before. We would not be able to go through this crisis with the lockdown approach without those new technologies available to all of us. There is a third thing, which is quite important, which is related to communication. So not only communication for our clients, but also internal communication. Those things have been key to maintain the focus and the direction of our business somehow. And we are talking about 100,000 employees here, and those talented people have been able to deliver an outstanding service, even in a situation like this that we are facing. And what is important as well at the corporate level is to have a clear understanding of the new priorities of our clients. The situation changed for them dramatically, as well changed for the financial sector, but the responsiveness to that has been key to maintain a good relationship in a very dramatic situation. So those are the messages that I'm considering at the corporate level. At the personal level, I would say that we are facing difficult times, and I believe everyone is taking into consideration some reflections about what's going on and about what's next. And I can share with you a history of our family. So in March, my wife and I contract coronavirus. And I had just mild symptoms, but my wife was in the hospital for 5 days. And the situation where you do not have all information, because you don't know exactly what is going to happen with the virus in this environment, and what would be the right treatment to fight against it. It's a situation where you have to consider that fragility is a key component somehow in our lives. So it is important to bring some reflection, to bring a better balance in our lives as much as possible, and of course a better allocation of our time, because I believe that's our extremely valuable asset that we have to think from now on. So thank you for the question.
Once again, thank you very much, Caio. I really wanted to do this conversation with you because one, the bank is a great example of corporate management. And I think we really need to have a steady hand at this point in business with all the uncertainty, as you well described, that they're going through. But also, I think the bank represents very well the focus on people. And I believe out of this crisis, more and more, we all need to really be concerned for people, be more compassionate, be more helpful, be a better neighbor. And I believe the bank also embodies those principles. And I think that should be one of the things that change in the near future, hopefully, that everybody is more focused on people rather than money itself. And finally, to end with a positive note, and I am a religious person, I hope this quarantine allows all of us to think about ourselves in all the dimensions, and that when we go out of the quarantine, we don't go out the same way that we started. Hopefully, we go out with stronger, with better purposes, with more energy, and that we somehow can use this situation to improve. So again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for all your opinions, very valuable. And I hope that we can have you here again in the future at some point.
Thank you very much, Victor. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.